The first photograph of Adrian's wedding reached me on a Tuesday morning. I remember the exact moment because it was raining. Not the violent kind of rain that makes Lego streets disappear beneath brown water, but a soft, persistent drizzle that tapped against my bedroom window like someone who had come to deliver bad news and was too polite to knock loudly. I was sitting beside the window with a cup of untouched tea between my hands when my phone vibrated. One message. No greeting, no explanation. Just a photograph. I almost ignored it. Then I saw his face. Adrian. Standing beneath a ceiling covered with white flowers, dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, smiling as if he had never broken my heart. Beside him stood Isabella, his wife, the woman he had chosen 3 months after I walked away. She wore a gown that seemed to be made entirely of light. Diamonds rested against her throat. Her hand was placed possessively on his chest, exactly where my hand had once rested when I believed that man's heartbeat belonged to me. I stared at the photograph until the screen blurred. Then I noticed something. Adrian wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking directly at Isabella, the same way he used to look at me. For a few seconds, my heart betrayed me. It remembered. It remembered the night he proposed with a cheap silver ring because he couldn't afford anything better. He remembered him kneeling on the floor of my tiny apartment when rain hammered the windows. He remembered his voice. "I don't care what anyone says. I'll choose you." I believed him. That was my first mistake. I placed the phone face down. Then it vibrated again. Another message. This time there was a caption beneath the photograph. "Some women leave because they believe they deserve better." My fingers went cold. I didn't need to ask who had written it. Adrian had always been proud of his ability to hurt people without touching them. He knew exactly where to place the knife. And this time, he wanted me to know that he had found someone else, someone richer, someone prettier, someone his family could proudly introduce, someone who, like me, could walk into his world without being questioned. I closed my eyes. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like if Adrian stopped loving me. I had imagined tears, anger, maybe even regret. I had never imagined humiliation. That was different. Humiliation didn't stab the heart. It made the heart question whether it had ever been worthy of love in the first place. I stood and walked to the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked ordinary. Shoulder-length hair, bare face, simple cream blouse. No jewelry except the small silver bracelet my grandmother gave me. I looked nothing like Isabella. For the first time, I wondered if Adrian had been right. Maybe I really wasn't enough. The thought lasted only a few seconds. Then I remembered his voice from the night I left. "You should be grateful I chose you." Something inside me became still. No, I wasn't going to spend another day measuring my worth against another woman's diamonds. I took the photograph off my phone, deleted the message, and placed the device inside a drawer. Then I walked downstairs. My grandmother's house was unusually quiet. The servants moved softly through the hallways, preparing breakfast, while sunlight struggled through the rain-streaked windows. I entered the old study. It had always been my favorite room. Dark wooden shelves covered every wall. There were paintings of people I had never met, old photographs, locked cabinets, and a massive mahogany desk that belonged to my father. My grandmother used to tell me never to open the bottom drawer, not until she was gone. She had been gone for 6 months, yet I had still obeyed her. That morning, something made me pull the drawer open. It didn't move at first. I pulled harder. The wood groaned. Inside was a single envelope. My name was written across it. Not my nickname, not the name my friends called me, my full name, in my grandmother's handwriting. I sat down. The rain continued tapping against the window. I opened the envelope. There was only 1 page. My dear child, there are truths I kept from you because I wanted you to discover yourself before you discovered what belonged to you. You were never poor. My breathing stopped. I read the sentence again, then again. The room seemed to become smaller around me. I continued. Your father left you more than a name. He left you controlling shares in the family company, properties, investments, and a trust created before your birth. My fingers began trembling. The page shook in my hands. I had known my family had money. I had known my father had owned businesses, but I had never understood the scale of it. My grandmother had always told me that wealth could become a cage if I discovered it before learning who I was. Now I understood why she had insisted I live simply, why she had never allowed me to attend certain family events, why she had asked me to work for myself, why she had smiled whenever I complained about having to take the bus instead of using one of the family cars. She hadn't been punishing me, she had been protecting me. At the bottom of the letter was another sentence. The trust becomes yours when you are ready to accept responsibility for it. Your lawyer has been instructed to explain everything. I lowered the paper. My eyes filled with tears, not because I was suddenly rich, but because my grandmother had trusted me enough to let me live without knowing. And Adrian had done the opposite. He had looked at my simplicity and decided it meant weakness. He had looked at my cheap clothes and assumed I had no value. He had never once asked what was behind the silence. The door opened. I looked up. Mr. Bennett, my family's longtime lawyer, stood there. He had been waiting for this moment. "You found the letter," he said. I nodded. "How much?" He didn't smile. "Enough to change your life." I looked toward the rain-streaked window. Did Adrian know? No. The answer came quickly. And his family? No. I swallowed. Does his father know about the shares? Mr. Bennett hesitated. That is complicated. I turned toward him. Tell me. He placed a thick black folder on the desk. Your father owned 47% of Vale Holdings before his death. My eyes moved to the folder. Vale Holdings? Yes. I knew the name. Everyone in Lagos knew the name. Adrian's family had spent years building their reputation around it, their hotels, their construction projects, their investment firms, their luxury properties. The company had always been Adrian's father's greatest ambition. Mr. Bennett continued, Your father's shares were placed into a trust. They were never transferred to Adrian's family. I stared at him. So they don't own the company? They control it. I understood. There was a difference, and that difference suddenly felt enormous. Mr. Bennett opened the folder. Legal documents, share certificates, property records, bank statements, investment portfolios, names, numbers, signatures. My father's signature, my grandmother's signature, and finally, mine. I touched the page with trembling fingers. What happens now? You assume control. I looked down at the documents. Outside, Thunder rolled softly across the city. Somewhere in Lagos, Adrian was celebrating his marriage. He believed he had won. He believed he had replaced me with a woman who could give him everything I couldn't. He had no idea that the woman he had discarded had just inherited the one thing his family had spent decades protecting: power. I closed the folder. Not today. Mr. Bennet was surprised. Why? Because I don't want to become cruel simply because someone was cruel to me. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. That night, I didn't sleep. I stood on the balcony and watched the city lights shimmer beneath the fading rain. I thought about Adrian. I wondered if he was happy. I wondered if Isabella knew that the man beside him had once promised another woman forever. I wondered if he thought about me. Then I realized something. It didn't matter. Because for the first time since I had met him, my future didn't have his name written across it. The following weeks changed me quietly. I didn't suddenly become glamorous. I didn't start wearing diamonds. I didn't buy a fleet of cars. Instead, I learned. Every morning I sat with lawyers. Every afternoon I studied financial reports. Every evening I read documents until my eyes hurt. I learned what my father had built. I learned what my grandmother had protected. And I learned that the company Adrian's family proudly called theirs was, in part, built on something that belonged to me. Still, I kept my secret. I wasn't ready to tell Adrian. Not yet. Because I wanted him to continue believing the story he had created. I wanted him to believe I was still the poor girl he had left behind. Sometimes truth becomes more powerful when you let a lie grow comfortable first. 3 months after the wedding, I received an invitation. A charity gala. Hosted by Heir Holdings. My name wasn't on the guest list, but my foundation had been invited. I almost laughed when I saw it. The foundation was newly established in my father's name. No one outside my legal team knew who controlled it. I accepted. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror wearing a simple black dress. No diamonds, no expensive necklace, just my grandmother's silver bracelet. I touched it. "I'm ready," I whispered. When I arrived at the gala, the ballroom was glowing. Crystal chandeliers, golden lights, soft music, hundreds of wealthy people laughing beneath ceilings higher than my old apartment. Then I saw him, Adrian. He stood beside Isabella. His hand rested around her waist. He looked happy, or at least he was trying very hard to look happy. Then his eyes found mine. His smile disappeared. For several seconds, neither of us moved. He walked towards me, slowly, confidently, as if he still had the right. "You came?" I looked at him. "Yes." He glanced at my dress, then at my bracelet, then back at my face. A small smile appeared. It wasn't kind. It was the smile of a man who believed he had already won. Still pretending to be poor? My heart didn't break. It didn't even ache. Something much stranger happened. I felt nothing. I looked past him at the woman he had married to punish me. Then I looked back at Adrian. "No," I said quietly. His eyebrows tightened. "What?" I smiled. For the first time, I'm not pretending at all. Before he could answer, someone called my name from across the ballroom. "Miss Vale." I turned. Mr. Bennet stood beside a group of executives. The chairman of Heir Holdings was there. Adrian's father was there. And the moment they saw me, the entire atmosphere changed. His father went pale. Adrian noticed. "What is this?" I didn't answer. Mr. Bennet stepped forward and held out his hand. "It's time." I looked at the man I once loved,
then at the family who once considered me beneath them, and finally at the folder waiting in my lawyer's hand. For months, Adrian believed he was punishing a woman who had nothing. Tonight, he was about to learn that the woman he had thrown away had never been powerless. She had simply been waiting for the right moment to remember who she was.
Mr. Bennet stepped closer and held the black folder toward me. For a moment, I simply stared at it. That familiar silver bracelet around my wrist touched the edge of the folder. And suddenly, I remembered my grandmother. I remembered her telling me that there would come a day when I would understand why she had kept certain doors closed. I thought she was talking about money. I was wrong. She had been talking about people. I looked down at the folder. My name was written on the first document, not as Adrian's former girlfriend, not as the poor girl his family had tolerated, not as the woman who had walked away from their son. My name was there as an owner, as an heir, as someone whose existence could change the future of the family standing in front of me. I slowly lifted my eyes. Adrian was staring at me. The confidence that had followed him into this ballroom was gone. He looked at the folder in my hands, then at Mr. Bennet, and finally at his father. It was almost painful watching the realization move across his face. He was remembering everything. The tiny apartment, my old clothes, the meals I used to prepare for him, the nights I waited for him, the day he told me I should be grateful that he had chosen me. He had mistaken my simplicity for weakness. He had mistaken my silence for ignorance. And worst of all, he had mistaken my love for dependence. Now he was looking at me as though he were seeing a stranger. But I wasn't a stranger. I was the same woman. I had simply stopped asking him to recognize my worth. His hand tightened around the champagne glass. For the first time, I could see fear behind his eyes. Not fear of losing me, something deeper. He was beginning to understand what losing me actually cost him. I didn't feel victorious. That surprised me. For months, I had imagined this moment. I had imagined standing in front of Adrian when he discovered the woman he abandoned had everything he thought she lacked. I thought I would feel satisfaction. Instead, I felt strangely empty. Because the truth was, I no longer wanted him to regret leaving me. I only wanted to stop regretting that I had ever loved him. Across the ballroom, Isabella stood completely still. Her eyes moved from Adrian to the documents in my hands. She had married him believing she was entering a powerful family. Now she was beginning to realize that the woman Adrian tried to erase from his past was connected to the very empire they were standing inside. The whispers around us grew louder. People were beginning to notice. They could see that something important had happened. But I didn't owe the room an explanation. I didn't owe Adrian one either. I turned my eyes toward his father. The older man looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. His face had lost its color. His lips parted. For several seconds he couldn't speak. Then he took one slow step toward me, and that was when I understood. He knew. He knew exactly who I was. Adrian looked at him. "Dad?" His father didn't answer. "Dad, what's going on?" Still nothing. Mr. Bennet remained beside me, calm and composed. Then he looked toward Adrian's father, and I saw something change in his expression. The pride disappeared. The certainty disappeared. What remained was fear. Not fear of me as a person, fear of what my name represented. Adrian turned back to me. "What is this?" His voice was different now, The arrogance was gone. I looked at him. For years, I had dreamed about telling him the truth, but standing there holding the documents that proved everything, I realized I didn't need to explain myself. The truth was already speaking. Mr. Bennet opened the folder again. The papers inside carried signatures, ownership records, trust documents, and the legal history of my father's estate. Adrian's eyes fell on the first page, then the second. His breathing changed. He looked at me again, and this time there was no mockery in his face, only disbelief. I could almost hear the question forming inside him. Who did I leave? The answer was simple. The woman he left had always been there. He simply never considered her worth knowing. I looked at the ballroom around me. The chandeliers, the expensive gowns, the champagne, the people who had once occupied a world where I was considered insignificant. Everything looked different now, not because the room had changed, because I had. Adrian's father finally raised his eyes to mine. He knew the truth, and before he could say it, Adrian followed his gaze. His face went completely still. I held the folder against my chest. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply stood there. Because sometimes the most powerful moment in a person's life isn't when they finally reveal who they are. It's the moment everyone else realizes they were wrong about them. Mr. Bennet stepped forward. Adrian's father stared at me. Adrian stopped breathing for a second, and around us the entire ballroom seemed to fall silent. The woman they had all believed had nothing was standing in front of them with the documents that could change everything. I looked directly at Adrian, and for the first time since he left me, I felt completely free. He had married another woman to make me regret walking away. He had wanted me to watch him choose someone else. He wanted me to feel small. But he had forgotten one thing. He had never known what I truly had. And now, standing beneath the same lights where he once celebrated replacing me, I finally understood the cruelest part of the truth. He hadn't lost me when I walked away. He had lost me the moment he decided my worth depended on what I could give him. Mr. Bennet looked toward Adrian's father. The older man's expression collapsed, and then he whispered the words that changed everything. "She's the heir." Adrian stared at me. The champagne glass slipped from his hand. It struck the marble floor and shattered. But I didn't flinch. I simply looked at him, because the poor girl he had hated had just become the woman their entire family would have to answer to. And Adrian finally understood that the woman he married another woman to punish had been the heir all along.